Hey associates, this video is a ride along, that sped up version of me doing the replication assignment for that README file. Really is a test of your mastery and kind of the tools in Word. And so Word is going to hate this a little bit. It's definitely not the strongest suited for like replicating a lot of these elements, but it is perfect to really get to know Word's powers, capabilities, all of its features and tools. Now I gave you the words, the copy. So here I'm going through and was figuring out, okay, this is a snip of all the kind of copy in this documentation that they made. And so I was just grabbing the portions that I realized I needed. Now, since there are technically 3 columns of content, my first thought was maybe I should work with columns. And so I wanted to give that a shot. By going into my paragraph options and selecting, 3 columns. But I quickly am realizing like, I can't adjust the width the way that I want. I don't think the columns are going to work. It makes that center far too skinny. And so I, Control Z, let's not do that after all. So then my second idea was to go with a text box. And so text boxes, right, give you a lot of control, manipulation, dragging them around, as long as you have the kind of position and alignment set up. In the insert tab, I'm drawing a shape, and so that is going to represent the top nav panel. At first I decided to put it in the header, so that way I'd have more kind of space, but later we'll see I actually changed my mind and don't use the header. It's because I find that I couldn't get it aligned quite the way I wanted. We'll see that later though. So now I'm kind of going through and realizing this is also going to be a text box, right? That tip text box. And so go ahead and do another free text box. I just, copy pasted or cut pasted rather. All right, so now I am manipulating the kind of page setup, the border alignment, giving myself some more space. So with your ruler at the top is where you can click on the little like L and the little caret to actually change where your right and left kind of alignment and breaks are. And so you will definitely need to play with that, manipulate that tool to get your page sizing right. I'm just going through and doing super basic font manipulation, bolding, getting my bullet points in, all those key tools that you need to be able to do in Word in order to get really any of your word process projects done. I wanted to see if I could find a font that matched better than was already there, and so I do waste a little bit of time going through this and ultimately decide that actually the font that's in there is close enough and fine, but I did just want to kind of go through and just see if there's something that I felt like was a stronger sans serif to it. Kind of a little tip, if you don't have a mouse for your laptop, super recommend getting a mouse. And if you get a mouse that has the shortcuts on it, the programmable buttons on your mouse, I definitely recommend making your mouse presets for Control C for copy, right? Control V for paste, and Control Z for cut. Usually speeds it up, manipulating all of those shapes. First, just adjusting, dragging that text box, making sure that it is sent in front of text, so that way I can have it overlapping those other elements. And then I just went into the format and removed the border, and that is how you have a text box that doesn't have a border. Okay, so I'm building this diagram. Do not just copy and clip the original diagram photo. No. Okay, I want you to actually practice with the tools inside of Word, the shapes, and the point of this assignment is to actually use all of the power and tools inside of Word to build these things. And Word does have tools for you to build simple diagrams like this. Any more complicated, you definitely would want to use our other tools for sure. Things like, Visio and actual kind of diagram schematic builders. But for something as this is kind of the line of simplicity that you absolutely can just do in Word itself. So here I do have like a little bit of a problem. You can type inside of the shapes. I was having a hard time grabbing it and like making sure that it was typing in. And so as you're doing it, just make sure that you actually do have a fill. So the part of the problem was that I had completely removed the fill of my shape instead of just changing the fill to be white. And so it was no longer like putting text inside of it. But once I figured out that I had made that mistake, and then that my text had turned white, then everything was good to go. So do make sure that you don't just have a transparent, meaning there is no fill, it's not going to type in because you're like you said not to fill it. Instead, go in, change it to a white fill. So I'm doing that on all of them once I kind of figured out that I had made that mistake. And now when I double click inside, it actually, puts the text inside of that shape the way that I wanted to, and just trying to kind of resize so that way I can fit this whole diagram shape onto my page. The shapes are simple drag and drop, and make sure that you have the kind of snapping, that alignment set to like in front of text, which is going to be the most freeform version. And so with those alignment options, things like tight and square are still going to manipulate any text or other objects to be either make a square, basically margin padding around your target shape, or have a really tight like minimum padding around your target shape, but it still is going to automatically be trying to snap things to it. And so if you do things like in front of text, it's basically saying ignore the text, just layer it on top of whatever else I have going on this page. And that's why we can do that actual free manipulation of the target objects. All right, Word also, right, and they have all the tools, all the shapes you need for basic diagrams. If your words in a text box ever disappear like that, it's just because your text box is too small for what you typed, and so you just drag it out, and you should see your text reappear in there. All right, adding another text box for your data. Hey, and there you go. And not that much time at all. Definitely a little bit annoying for sure, but not that much time at all. I used Word's built-in tools to make my own little shape. Okay, now I got my diagram set up. I'm just going back through. That was honestly probably the hardest part of this build is doing that diagram. It's hard, it's annoying, and it's good to just know the limits of Word. So now I'm doing honestly the much easier stages of just kind of finishing some stuff. So I'm working on that tip text box, and kind of getting these colors in, finding that sort of aqua, and Word doesn't have a good eyedropping tool the same way something like Canva or PowerPoint does, and so I went to that Adobe color tool that does have an eyedropper, so that way I could grab these kind of specific codes. And then when I went back into the more fill options, custom, and I just pasted the color code in there, and so that's how I got that exact kind of shade. To get that top little box, drawing another shape, and then I just needed to send it to the back. Then I was like, wait a minute, something isn't right. So I ended up changing the main text box kind of fill to be transparent, so that way you could see the border of the main text box, but my shape layer kind of behind the text itself. Grab that little flame from the icons. I was like, okay, I do need some sort of llama icon. So what are some llama pictures that we have? Is there anything that could, in a faster step, right? Using this is easier. Even went to some online photos, couldn't find anything, so I did decide to do a quick snip of the icons. So you can snip the icon and paste some of those things in, but I do not want you to snip the diagram. I want you to practice building the diagram yourself as a practice of the actual Word tool. So now to try to get that kind of shadow border that they have on the navigation pane, I'm just going into my shape effects and putting a shadow kind of preset on it and just adjusting things. Doing some additional manipulation, changing the line spacing of my text box for the side navigation, and just so I can get a little bit closer to the proportions that they have as well, and making sure it fits in my text box a little bit better, and just changing the color, right? Notice the table of contents and things are like a little bit more grayed out, and so making sure to update those gray elements as well, manipulating all of those font tools to get as close as I could. Here's another place where I'm going to have to go into that ruler tab and manually adjust where my indentation and tabbing is, because it was too extreme. And so you have the ability to fully customize where your lines start, where they end, how far of an indentation the tab makes through that little ruler caret at the top. Hey, I noticed, right, they have the little arrows. So just went and grabbed an arrow shape, go into shape format and actually converted it to individual objects, because I just needed one of those little arrows, one of those little carrots. And then I'm just kind of resizing so that way it turns into a nice little tiny kind of carrot there. Copy, paste once I had it the size and general sort of shape that I wanted. That's a hyperlink. Of course, I could have just put a random website URL to get it to be that color in there if I wanted, though then it would underline it, which is not quite the right formatting. So I chose to just mainly go in and change the color so it looks like a hyperlink, but of course it is not going to link anywhere. But that's okay. In this replication, I'm really more focused on getting the look and feel. So now I'm doing a last check, being like, did I have everything? Oh no, I forgot a bunch of stuff. And so those two elements, absolutely, you can copy paste the llama stuff and the read the doc stuff. But everything else, there are things in Word that you should be using and manipulating, so that way you know how to use the tool. That is the point of this. I don't necessarily like it's not a skill to just copy a whole entire image and paste it on there. Right? The point of this exercise is for you to really get to know the more advanced kind of boundaries of Word and all the tools available. So I'm grabbing badges and icon search, and I'm doing kind of a last check there, just making sure all the bolding and the colors. I found one that I had forgotten. So updating that color again. So in order to complete this assignment, we had to do text box manipulation, we had to do layering with those objects, we had to insert icons, symbols, shapes, we had to adjust the colors of those shapes and icons, and we had to do basic font manipulation as well as the columns, tabs, and spacing, all to build something inside of Word. All right, thanks associates, vibes.